target on something ahead, reach out to the pilot's planner. Back for another edition of the Wealthy Pilots Podcast with Scott Osborn, and we're going to talk a little post-election conversation, Scott, this week, my friend. Just some things. I mean, it's really, really early, but there's been a lot of moving and shaking going on. Obviously, the markets have been fairly happy. So we're just going to talk about a couple of things, I guess, forecasting, if you will, but knowing that tons of stuff could change along the way. But just some things to think about a little bit. How you doing?
I'm great. How about you?
I'm doing very well. Looking forward to chatting with you about it. I guess we could just jump right in and talk about one of the big pieces of now that we know we have a Trump presidency on the way, is that the TCJA, right? The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Obviously, that was put in under the first administration. It was set to expire. You and I have talked about this a number of times already at the end of next year. But now, obviously, he's going to probably want to try to see if he can get that extended, if not made permanent. So that's got some people thinking, hey, financially planning speaking, that could be cool. I mean, if nothing else, it gives us more time for Roth conversions, right? Because people were thinking, hey, I'm running out of time to do Roth conversions with only like a year left, at the current tax rate. But that could change planning. So that's a big piece of the conversation now as well.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a handful of things, right, that are coming out. And, I think it's interesting because, this is Trump's second presidency. And, since the last time he was president, I picked up a few new Hungarian daughters. As you know, we adopted the 3 girls last year. So they're learning English. This is their first presidential election. And it was really funny because the oldest one, she's 10. Her name's Ellie. She says to the other one, Catherine, "Hey, Kat, did you know this is the last time Trump can be president?" And Kat looks over at me and she goes, "I didn't know that. Nobody told me." And I don't know. We just had a big laugh about it, but it got my wife and I talking about how, hey, it is interesting now that he's president a second time. I think he's probably learned a few things from his first round in the ring.
You can see that whenever he talks. Yeah.
Well, and I think also you can see it in terms of even how he's starting to appoint the cabinet and different things he's got going on. And so
for sure,
I think the learning curve is probably behind him, and he's going to try to move a lot quicker in some of these items. So I do think taxes is going to be one thing that hopefully, to the point you just said, they can extend it.
Possibly. That's one option.
Option. They can make it permanent, even better, because then it's not as tied to the political landscape. And I don't think you'll find many people, and you haven't heard many people from the other side of the aisle, I'll say, complain about that tax program very much.
Considering that the other person was running on lowering taxes as well, the thing that was funny that never really got talked about in any of the stuff is that we are in historical low tax rates, right? I mean, the TCJA is historically low, like the candidate or not, like the president coming in or not, it's historically low. So from that standpoint, extending that should make a lot of Americans happy from that standpoint, because at least against the devil, where your taxes are going to be possibly for the next 5-7 years or more, depending on what they get.
And I think too, that with the deadline coming up here at the end of 2025, it has prompted some people, I think, to take more action. My concerns for some folks is they're like, oh, I can procrastinate a little bit longer. Where ultimately, if you really are trying to work on something strategically, you're not going to be able to bite the whole elephant in one tax year anyways. You need several years to kind of work your diffusing of a traditional IRA over time.
Yeah, kind of Rothing over time, things people have heard, stuff like that before, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, with it getting extended, I think if you're kind of in that mindset of, should I be doing something? The answer is probably yes, you should. And if it gets extended, you should be not viewing that as an opportunity to procrastinate, but viewing that as an opportunity to say, whew, I got a little bit more time to get some more work here done.
Yeah, for sure. Now, there's also the corporate tax cut conversation, right? So obviously, under the TCJA corporate tax rates are at 21, which they loved. We saw a lot of companies like Apple bring billions back into the country the first go around. If they can get it done, of course, having a House and a Senate makes it a little easier. Talk about making it maybe even 15%, right?
Yeah.
The idea being to spurn on job creation and growth here by letting companies go, hey, I want to bring my money back in, right?
Well, and I know
so these seem to be positives.
Yeah, and the corporate tax rate can be a real grind for some people because it's like, oh man, the company's already making so much money and blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, all the companies that we're investing in are trying to make money. And so they're trying to either reinvest at the company or pay dividends out to shareholders while they're increasing their share price and providing shareholder value. So at the end of the day, that's a good thing that more of that money goes to the company than it does the government typically. So now it'll be interesting to see what shakes out in terms of, if they're able to do things to make the government more efficient, you don't need as much money to run it, which we
could talk about that as well. Yeah, we got the office of the DOGE coming in.
It's almost if we had a Department of Government Efficiency to help. Oh, shoot. Sounds like we're going to have.
Oh, shoot. Now sounds like we're going to. Yeah. So no matter what you think, I mean, there's some crazy stuff out there we spend money on. So, I mean, you could go watch some of, was it Rand Paul? I think some of his videos that he shows in the Senate. I mean, $1.5 million to see the effects of alcohol on fish. I mean, so there's lots of ways we could probably get efficient, because people wonder, hey, how are we going to keep the taxes, low that they're at? How are we going to be able to handle the corporate tax rate being cut? How are we going to maybe handle that whole campaign promise of no Social Security on, tax on Social Security? Well, getting more efficient with the government is probably one way. Tariffs is the other. Those are going to be the big topics of conversation, I think, going through the next couple of months.
Yeah. And I think, one thing I think is interesting about all this is, like, at the end of the day, as an individual voter / consumer investor, we cannot impact, we can impact with our vote, but we can't impact what the entire political landscape is doing, what the market or economy is doing. You can stand on the sidelines and worry about the crash of the dollar and be buying a bunch of silver or whatever. But at the end of the day, while these companies and the economy is growing and making money, it's best to be participating in that while the times are good, to make the money so you can survive when times are not. Because ultimately, if we look back historically, we're still in the middle of a pretty strong growth period. I know 2022 was a down year, but a year back, we are beyond overdue for some sort of recession. I know we just had a chat with our clients earlier this week, and we said, hey, in the next 4 years, it's very likely we'll see some significant correction.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, you can't make a lot of changes and try to do some of the things they're talking about doing. And I think Americans want to have done, because they clearly voted for it, right? Yep. Even with the popular vote, without having, you're going to have some struggle. Anybody who's ever balanced their own home budget or done something, as a couple, and you're going through life and you got a little, you charged a little too much. You got a little too much in debt, right? You had to build a plan. You had to work the plan in order to get back onto good ground. And I think the country's going to experience some of that. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, we know that the political landscape is going to be, oh, look, they're doing a terrible job kind of thing. Sure. But bumps along the way are going to happen to get through. We still have $36 trillion in debt. Right. Yeah. We still have some things to work on.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like, when you look at the market specifically, one of the things I've been hearing from some folks is, like, it's weird, like, the same data point is received differently by people based off of what their sentiment is at the moment. Right. So, like, some people are saying, oh man, look how well the market's doing. The market must have really liked the election. It's going to keep on going up and up and up. And then other people are like, holy cow, the market was already having a great year, and now S&P's over 6,000 for the first time ever. Should we be worried? Is this a bad time to be investing? And maybe we should get on the sidelines. And so, to me, even that kind of situation, it's like, if you look at the data, the data will tell you if the market's at a top or not. After 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, it doesn't really matter that much. It might make a difference inside of 6 months. It might. Right. But if you're trying to buy the S&P 500 to make money in a 6-month time frame, that's not the smartest thing I've seen somebody do. Not the dumbest, but it ain't the smartest either.
And I think we all know the market tends to be forward looking. They kind of bake some of that stuff in. The first 6 days after the election, the Dow, I know you most of the time like to look at the S&P, but just the Dow, for example, was up like 6%, over the first 5 or 6 days. But now a couple days later, it's cooled a little bit. So I don't think they get super crazy, but they do seem to be forward looking. And a lot of that could be due to the corporate tax conversation and the reduction of red tape. We saw that the first go around with Trump's presidency. Reducing red tape tends to make corporations happy, which tends to make, functions better, thereby providing for growth. So again, you're going to have these ebbs and flows, right?
Well, and it was interesting what really caused a big tick up in the first couple of days after the election was not even on the institutional side, but more on the retail side. billions and billions and billions of cash got pumped into the market, where people, I think, were just a little bit more confident in the direction of the economy. So and when you hear that coming from institutional, to me, that makes you think, there's something probably politically behind the scenes. Maybe we don't understand, or they're really looking at the long-term strategy. When you hear it's all coming on the retail side, it really tells you people were very uncertain and very unsettled. And then, they're more confident now than they were before. So that
could make for an interesting holiday season. Yeah. I mean, the holiday season could be a big tale.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, but at the same token, I do think, it's prudent for people, especially if you're, in the back half of your career, let's say, this might be a time where you say, hey, the market's not going to go straight up forever. We do know that it's going to have some sort of correction at some time. And a big thing that I always try to remind people, if you look at the intra-year is January 1st to December 31st, right? The intra-year, we almost every year, we have a period where we're down 10% off a high, intra-year. We had that this year. If you remember this summer, we had it, where we lost about 10% in a week and a half, But you look at where we're at for the year, I mean, that's just white noise. That feels like it was 10 years ago. It was just a couple months ago. But that intra-year noise is something that I think you can really capitalize on at times where, the market knows, hey, it's gotten a little hot. It's going to cool down with people skimming profits. And then, it'll ride back up. So this could be a good time when we're kind of getting to that upward trend where if you're pumping money into an account every single month, to maybe just be having that go to cash and just get what I call a little dry powder, a little money on the sideline.
Shore up the emergency fund, and some things. Yeah.
And and then, really be ready for when that correction comes to be able to go in there and buy the dip, so to speak. You're never going to time it perfect, but you can, especially for those people that are accumulating, it's a good time to, have a little dry powder in there and be ready to buy. If you're, in that retirement phase, this is a great time to be skimming some of those profits as well and funding the next couple of years of income.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget that's the point, right? Buy low, sell high. Mm-hmm. So therefore, if we do see a downturn while some recovery is happening with the economy, that's great. That's a great point, right? You could be getting in, buying it at a lower price, which again is the name of the game. So being efficient right now and being smart still seems like that's on the docket then, is what I'm hearing from a lot of advisors like yourself, right? It's no matter how you voted politically, let's just, read the tea leaves and be smart.
Well, and I think too, there's the buy and hold mindset. I think is a great mindset. For the long-term investor, all the data would tell you like buying and holding is vital. But there's an important part that I think many people forget in that equation, which is buy, hold, and rebalance. So if you're in a globally diversified portfolio, your U.S. holdings should have been killing it recently. This is a good time to rebalance and skim some of those profits off of the U.S., maybe buy some real estate that's down, buy some international that's maybe been doing well, but not as well. And so that way, when, the U.S. does take a dip, you're not just riding that down without ever making some money on it too. So that buy, hold, and rebalance is kind of an important step that many people that subscribe to buy and hold forget to do, but it's actually one of the leading generators of compounding and long-term returns. So.
Yeah. Well, and we're at the end of the year, right? It's going to come fast and furious now. So I'm sure next week probably we'll talk a little bit about some things to think about at the end of the year within the next week or so as we're winding down. So we just wanted to touch base a little bit on some of these topics, post-election. Obviously, lots of changes probably going to be coming fast and furious over the next couple of months. And we'll be back to talk with them more along the way. So if you got any questions, need some help, check the show notes below. Always reach out to a qualified professional like Scott before you take any action. You can find all that good jazz in the show notes. We make the links there easy for you. But you can also just check out retireairlines.com. That's retireairlines.com. We're calling them at 419-482-8051. Anything else before we go, brother?
No, man. Good to go. Stay the course, and you'll be rewarded for it.
There you go. We'll see you next time here on the Wealthy Pilots Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to us on whatever platform app you like using, Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. We'll see you next time.
Is your 401k working as hard as you are? Let's find out at thepilotsplanner.com to get started with your free full thrust 401k toolkit. Come see what a good financial co-pilot can do to help make sure your retirement is ready to take flight. Visit us at thepilotsplanner.com. That's thepilotsplanner.com.
Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, investment, or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified investment, legal, or tax professional before taking any action.